Yeah, on Monday, we were alerted of a protest that was supposed to hit the Kingdom of Eswatini. And, various, entities that side were told not to report for work, especially teachers were told not to go to school. Yeah, the pupils are also told not to go to school. That was on Monday, in somewhat of an anticipation on Tuesday, being yesterday, of a nationwide shutdown in that country and somewhat of a protest. I'm joined on the line by Swazi News journalist, that is ZweMart. He's already on the line, and as well as a political analyst, Dr. Sphetfo Dlamini. They both join me on the line. Zweli and Dokotela, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for both agreeing to chat to us.
Thank you.
Very good evening to you.
Yeah. Dokotela, let me start with you. I mean, if you look at the political climate in the Kingdom of Eswatini, how best would you describe it?
Look, thanks very much for that question. The current situation in Swaziland has taken a different toll altogether. It has now begun to have signs leading towards violence, particularly perpetrated by the king and his henchmen in Swaziland by different utterances that are not necessarily demonstrating a good quality leadership that is interested in bringing about peace and unity, but instead utterances that seeks to kill Emaswati, utterances that wants to encourage the police force to kill Emaswati simply by voicing out their concerns of wanting to be governed in a particular way, and only one way, that is through a multi-party democratic kind of structure.
Yeah, I'm glad you have touched on that aspect, Dokotela, because that's where I'd like Uzweli to start. Uzweli, talk us through the article, the article piece that, that's on the Swazi News, particularly on the sentiments shared by Qete Mabuza. One of the pro-democracy members who's now incarcerated in one of the prisons there in the kingdom. He seems to make somewhat of a statement to say that the prison is making them strong. Your views on that? Do you think their well-being is not compromised in the prison?
Thank you for that question. You will understand that this is a pro-democracy MP, another one known as Nthandeni Dube. He was arrested merely for demanding democratic reforms, and it's been a year now since it's been incarcerated. So yesterday, that was Tuesday, he appeared in court, and he demonstrated our perseverance as far as his political beliefs are concerned. He even said that the prison is making him very strong. He even told those correctional officers that they must get used to escorting him, because one day they will escort him to the Freedom Day. And these two MPs were incarcerated, and the other one who's in exile. They are one of the pillars of the calls for democratic reforms. And the way things are happening now in Swaziland, they understand that many people were disappointed, and in fact they were enlightened when these MPs were arrested, because they didn't realize that in fact Eswatini is ruled by a dictator.
Yeah, you're on RiseFm in 60 minutes. We're having a Swazi dialogue this evening. I'm joined by a Swazi journalist, Zweli Dlamini, and as well as a political analyst, Dr. Sphetfo Dlamini. Yeah, my guest this evening, we're looking at the state of politics and just the state of affairs in the Kingdom of Eswatini. Dokotela and Zweli, I'd like to play this clip, and I'd like to get your reaction, particularly some of the utterances made by Ngonyama on the police day in the kingdom.
Nani maphoyisa siyatwe ukuthi kulukhuni kepha kulamalanga naniphuma nifanele niphume nitilungiselele kubonakala ukuthi nani awusebenza nathi ukuthi la niyakhona sekuneliso lelinye nifanele niyeke nani ni well prepared ukuthi liso liqhamukako nibuka ngeso ngeso.
Yeah, Dokotela, let me start there with you. I mean, Ngonyama seems to be saying that the police must gear themselves up and, fully prepare themselves when they go out on the streets. I mean, the Sive Siyanqoba movement, seeks to say that this is somewhat of a civil war incitement. I mean, is also that your view?
No, thanks for that one. One did not hear in the beginning when you introduced, but maybe let's correct this one before we go forward. I am conducting this interview as the Secretary General of the Swaziland Liberation Movement, and not necessarily as a political analyst.
Okay.
But to answer the question, therefore, I've just heard the clip that you have played, a clip that is very disturbing, as alluded earlier on, a clip that is way against and unexpected from a monarch. A figure of Mswati's caliber or kind is not meant to be uttering such. This basically is not bringing about unity in Swaziland. When Swati are interested in bringing about political reforms through peaceful means, and then you hear a so-called head of state encouraging the police to shoot and kill a Maswati through what I will refer to his exact words, an eye for an eye. It's very disturbing. In fact, it has the potential of encouraging a Maswati to then say clearly, we don't seem to be having a head of state. We don't have someone who's taking care of us. Instead, I think, as Zweli is saying, Maswati have now perceived Mswati the Third as a dictator and as somebody who wants to see the country in chaos. And interestingly, we are already seeing signs heading towards that direction.
So your contribution in that clip there, I mean, the king saying that an eye for an eye.
I was very disappointed as well because as a head of state in Swati is supposed to be a uniting figure, and he was supposed to push issues of the dialogue which remain an integral part in the entire democratic discourse in Swati. But hearing a head of state uttering such utterances, you will then ask yourself if the denial that has been made by the government when the king never issued an order to shoot and kill dozens of civilians during the political unrest, can they then come up now and deny that in as far as these utterances are concerned? Because the king, in his own sentiment, said police must make an eye for an eye. And now we're seeing police shooting civilians, and these shooting of civilians have been revived, and we are expecting to see more bloodshed in Eswatini if regional organizations are not intervening, because on the other hand, we have the Swaziland International Solidarity Forces who are determined to protect the civilians by targeting police officers. So with these utterances, it means the king is now saying the police must get ready for a civil war. And I believe that maybe international human rights organizations and regional bodies will keep a closer eye to this head of state who seems determined to kill civilians.
Zweli, also, I want to get your view, particularly on just the contributions that were made towards the police day. I mean, I understand that, there was somewhat of 500,000 in Malangeni that were anticipated, but instead, a certain region or certain province in Eswatini contributed about 18,000 in Malangeni. I mean, could that also be a view to say there are people who are pro, democracy within the police force?
There are many factors that could have influenced that. Firstly, police are broke in Eswatini. They don't have money. And secondly, police have just realized that King Mswati is oppressing them as well, because when he ordered them to go and fight or shoot civilians, those civilians, on the other hand, are fighting back because we are now seeing retaliation. So we have been reporting about this, saying these police officers are now reluctant to contribute. And true to our stories, there was 18,000 that was reported to have been contributed by police officers in the Manzini region, when in fact the target was around 500,000. So you can then see that police officers are now pro-democratic. Some of them are contacting us, saying they are waiting for an order, the pro-democracy leaders, to tell them what to do. And we are hoping that with such developments, where police officers are demonstrating a desire to be free as well, the Freedom Day is near in Eswatini.
Yeah. Dr. I want to bring you in there. I mean, Zweli is saying that some of this police force in the kingdom are somewhat also reaching out to saying, you guys give us an indication when this is, we'll definitely support you. But also, let me bring you to something, Dr. Because my question to you would be, do you think that the Swazi police force is well equipped to deal with the sporadic protests that have been happening in the kingdom? Because there was somewhat of sentiments that Zweli on the Swazi news, they reported of, the police commissioner, that is, Ubabu William Dlamini. He somewhat interrogated the Swazi National Association of Teachers president to say, who is this commander, or who is behind, some of, this shutdowns and just, these orders that are created in the kingdom. Then the question to you is, do you think the police force, is it well equipped to deal with some of the sporadic, protest actions?
Yeah, well, allow me not to sound like a political analyst when I'm trying to answer you this question.
Yeah.
But what I can say confidently is that power has shifted in the country altogether. And it has shifted in the sense that the people no longer are interested in listening to the monarchy or adhering to orders that are being brought about by the monarch or the regime or the government. We've seen that in the past, of course, to say the politics have now taken a different detour, where even when it comes to issues of a holiday, they defy any holiday or any day that is referred to as normal by the regime. But instead, they want to hear what I would refer to as the mass democratic movement says. So if the mass democratic movement says it's a holiday today, then Maswati will adhere to that and will not be going to work and will not undertake any government services or find themselves, in a space where a normal country would normally be. And therefore, one really has doubts that the police force still has that capability or capacity, particularly because the police themselves have been very much convinced of how much they do not want the king. And this is demonstrated clearly by, the king himself, perceived to be hiring other foreign forces or security, because he himself no longer trusts the police force. And so what happened during the police day, it was really the king trying to, console himself by uttering those words which were really out of order, as we would like to believe this was a liberation movement, to say this has the potential of perpetrating more violence than bringing into, a peace in the country. So I can confidently say it's more like you were speaking to deaf ears, because much of the police force as well have their hearts outside the boundaries of the regime.
Yeah, Zweli, let me just bring you in there. Just lastly, what really happened yesterday? I mean, we were somewhat anticipating somewhat of a countrywide shutdown, led by the pro-democracy movement. I mean, did that happen? And what sort of, highlights, one could take away from just the statement that the pro-democracy movement was making towards the monarch?
Can you repeat your question?
I'm asking if just the country shutdown that was scheduled yesterday by the pro-democracy movement, did it unfold as planned?
Yes, of course. In fact, the shutdown was announced by the Swaziland International Solidarity Forces it is an underground wing linked to the pro-democracy movement. Because you'll understand that the pro-democracy movement is this underground wing that is protecting the civilians. So now the underground wing is popular among the people. The people are excited. They are testing leadership because they are seeing people who are protecting them. Those leaders who are visible, the leaders that they know that we have these leaders, but we have those who are underground protecting us. So what happened yesterday and the previous week, I think Monday, the underground movement announced that after 15 days there will be a shutdown. But what actually happened thereafter, they then decided that no, children are writing exams, so they then decided to lift this shutdown for 2 days, and not necessarily for 2 days. They then decided that it must then proceed for 2 days, and then thereafter schools will proceed, everything will be normal. They will then come up with a plan very soon, because I was in a meeting with them today, interviewing some of them, and they told me that they will soon announce some operation. In fact, they told me to wait for what they described as breaking news. So once these people start to deliver as they have made the threat, then the people will know these people are serious. That's why we are seeing the pro-democracy movement now being strengthened, because there's an underground wing that is fighting the police, that is targeting the civilians. So that's how it happened. The Monday and Tuesday was influenced by what was attacked by the pro-democracy movement underground wing.
Yeah. Zweli, thank you so much, my brother. Dokotela, maybe you also have just a last say there. I mean, how are you I suppose, as the Swazi Liberation Movement, how are you strengthening your relationships, particularly with that of other political parties outside, the Kingdom of Eswatini, especially after the utterances that were made by Ngonyama on the police day?
Yeah, no, the journey to the liberation of Swaziland is clean and clear. There's been quite a lot of work that is done collaboratively with other political parties, but the broader mass democratic movement seems to be gaining much of its strength, from among other things, through its independent media platform. More, even though it's not necessarily print media per se, but through social media platforms, more like what happened during the Arab Spring, more like the impact that social media had in the Arab Spring. But there seems to be quite a lot of unity within the political parties themselves and different structures who are basically interested in spreading the word and eventually attaining freedom for Emaswati. So Emaswati, as we speak right now, will not rest until the two members of parliament who are incarcerated are basically released, until President Nduduzi Magaukau, who is the leader and president of Swalimo, comes back from exile, and until the country itself finds adopting fully fledged multi-democratic elements.
Yeah, Dokotela, let's leave it there for this evening. Zweli, and as well as you, Dokotela, really appreciate you both availing yourself for a conversation this evening. Bumalanga there, I was chatting to the Secretary General of Swalimo, that is the Swaziland Liberation Movement, and as well as a journalist there in the Kingdom of Eswatini. He leads Swazi News, that is Zweli Dlamini, helping us understand the picture that is painted there in the kingdom, following those reports of a protest that was scheduled yesterday. Is really saying that it did happen, and they're saying that more breaking news are to be anticipated as far as the Kingdom of Eswatini is concerned. 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 Kingdom of Eswatini is concerned.
You care about what goes onto your skin. You care about the products that are approved by dermatologists, suitable for your skin type. and renowned for real customer testimonials. You want that glow. The Portia M Beauty Store at Swaziland's Gables Shopping Center has the products you need to achieve those skin goals. Water! Come get that glow.